And first of all, as Ravi was saying, I think the most important need of the hour is to take care of yourselves and take care of your families because this pandemic is spreading really, really fast. And I think all of us should set examples by taking all possible precautions. And as they call it, the COVID appropriate behavior is extremely important, especially here in Delhi, where I am based. Things are really becoming bad towards every day. And we all need to be very, very careful. Okay. Anyhow, so with that, let us start. Today's class is a little bit, how shall I say, a bit different. It will be more of a general kind of a class. So as usual, we will start with the quick recap of what we have covered from the list of the key factors that influence digital transformation. And we'll be covering another major aspect of digital transformation today, which is innovation, or rather innovative thinking to transform existing methods, processes, technologies, and models. Now, as we have been talking, innovation is at the core of a successful digital transformation. I have not heard of any successful digital transformation at enterprise level or business level, which is not relied almost entirely on innovation. So it's very important to talk about innovation, and as we shall see more in this class. So the purpose of this today's class is twofold actually. One is of course to introduce the key concepts involved in innovative thinking, and second, equally importantly from all of yours perspective, is to create a template and discuss some ideas for the digital transformation exercise or the presentation that you'll be preparing using the principles that we have covered so far in all of these lectures over the last 2-3 months. Okay, so these are the two objectives with which we will go through today's class. Okay, but before I start, just a quick word. See, first of all, on innovation, see, it is my belief and experience that innovation is not an inborn quality. A lot of us tend to think that, okay, so and so is born creative person or innovative person. It's not true, actually. It, what I believe is that everyone is capable of it. Sometimes the best of innovation comes from somebody who's to give an educational example, somebody who's a complete backbencher or somebody who's normally completely silent, somebody that suddenly one day that person rises up and hesitatingly says something which actually is a very good idea. We all later realize. So the problem is not that idea was not there. The problem was that it was not articulated or voiced. So it is very important in innovation, not just to have creative ideas, which all of us are capable of, but to also have what is called a backbone. Okay, never be afraid of voicing your ideas. Otherwise, you can never be innovative. You may have the most creative, you may be the next Albert Einstein, but if you're not speaking out, if you're not expressing your ideas, you will not be able to channelize your innovation. In fact, many good ideas and creative outputs I can remember, though we don't have time to talk about all of them, have been lost because of this notion of people thinking that they're not innovators and hence incapable of innovative ideas. So let me repeat, we are all capable of generating innovative ideas, all of us, every one of us. Okay, all it needs is opening up your minds and practicing some simple techniques. However, this much I will say that innovation is a matter of practice. You should be able to know how to practice. You should be able to control your mind in a way that it is open and sort of capable of generating ideas and does not allow those ideas to remain locked in some corner of your brain and never being able to see the light. So that is important. Being able to speak out your ideas, never be afraid. No idea is bad, okay, right or wrong. There's no such thing. Okay, it may be a different idea. That's all. Okay, so a lot of times I have seen good innovation getting lost or wasted only because somebody did not speak up in time. Okay, now there are certain techniques, as I also mentioned, which need to be regularly practiced. Now, we have just about an hour in this class, so it is unfortunate, but time does not permit us to learn those techniques in this class. So I can only introduce what is innovation, and I'll try to do it in a way that makes it sound sort of interesting. But however, I will say that these techniques are available. I'm sure that you will have opportunities in your working careers to have some nice workshops, or you can read books, or you can find a lot of tutorials on the web. They are very simple, and when you go through them, you find out, "Wow, why didn't I think of it earlier? Yeah, this should be the right way of doing it." Okay, so I strongly encourage you to learn and practice these techniques, not now, Right now, you may be focused on your exams and all, but whenever you have time, just try and read about innovation, the innovative techniques like lateral thinking, like six thinking hats, or cross fertilization or bucketization, and intersection, infusion, and there's so many excellent techniques, fishbone diagram, Pareto. All these are techniques to solve problems innovatively. Okay, so try and apprise yourself of that. Trust me, it is going to make a big difference in your life. Okay, so let us, today I have slightly more number of slides, but so I'll spend shorter time on each slide. Okay, now this is an interesting slide, the next one that I'm presenting, breaking the barriers. Now, there are a lot of things I'll say, but all are important, so just listen. Okay, now there is no reason anywhere would want a computer in their home. Who said this? Ken Olsen, who was the president and chairman and the founder of DEC, or Digital Equipment Corporation. He said this in 1977, that there is no reason anyone would want a computer in their home. Now we know that this is a totally fallacious idea. This is wrong. Today, every home has a computer. So it was wrong. And who said it? Look at the profile of the person who said it. So if somebody had believed him, hey, Ken Olsen is saying it, so of course there is no future for computers in their home, we would not have computers today. There are many examples I want to give like this, because this is important. A rocket will never be able to leave the Earth's atmosphere. This was published in the New York Times as an output of a collective view of the scientific community. There was a large science conference in 1936 in which they decided that a rocket cannot leave the Earth's atmosphere. We now know different, of course. Okay, television will not be able to hold on to any market it captures after the first 6 months. People will soon get tired of staring at a plywood box every night. Okay, another famous person said this. Okay, look at this one, Robert Metcalfe. Some of you would have heard about it. He was the one who invented the Ethernet or the LAN protocols. He said that the internet will soon go spectacularly supernova, and in 1996 it will catastrophically collapse. This was his prediction in 1995. Okay, Robert Metcalfe, one of the most eminent names in the field of computers. Heavier than air flying machines are impossible. Lord Kelvin, I'm sure you have all heard of him. Kelvin's law, and there's so many. He's a great physicist. He said that heavier than air flying machines are impossible. Today, every plane that you see in the sky is heavier than air. Okay, I have many examples, and I love talking about these examples. Now, listen to what Ernest Rutherford. I'm sure you all have heard of Rutherford. Okay, the energy produced by the breaking down of the atom is a very poor kind of thing. Anyone who expects a source of power, that means nuclear power, from the transformation of these atoms is talking moonshine. He said this in 1933. Today, nuclear energy is so common, so popular. Okay, then look at this. There will never be a bigger plane built. Who said this? The chief engineer of Boeing. After the first flight of Boeing 247, which was a twin-engine plane that could hold 10 people. He said this in 1977. I think maybe before 1977, probably. I may have typed this wrong. But anyhow, what he said was that there will never be a bigger plane built that can carry more than 10 people. Today, we know with A380 and all those new aircrafts coming in, how wrong this is. Now, Charlie Chaplin, one of the most famous actors and celebrities of all time, he said that the cinema is canned drama. Because at that time, people used to watch dramas on stage, plays as we call it. Okay, what audiences really want is flesh and blood on the stage. So he said cinema will not work. Okay, then he was the aide-de-camp to Field Marshal, to a very senior Field Marshal in World War I. He said that the idea that the cavalry means horses. Cavalry will be replaced by these iron coaches, that is tanks. It's absurd. It's a little sort of prisoners. When somebody came to him and presented tanks as an alternative to cavalry, he said this. Okay, we all know how wrong it is. Then look at what Albert Einstein said. There cannot be a bigger mind and bigger scientist than Albert Einstein. He said, there is not the slightest indication that nuclear energy will ever be obtainable. It would mean that the atom would have to be shattered at will. He never believed that the atom could be shattered. It was only after his death that the atom was shattered and we could get to the subatomic level. Okay, then there is practically no chance that communication space satellites will be used to provide better telephone, telegraph, television, or radio service. Nobody could imagine that all these telecommunication services could be delivered or received, and receiving and transmission of these services could be done using satellites. Or the idea of communication satellites was, and he was the chief of FCC, the person who said this. Then I think this is the last one. H.G. Wells, some of you would have read his books. He's the biggest science fiction writer. He wrote The Time Machine and all those so many science fiction books. He said that I must confess that my imagination refuses to see the sort of submarines, any sort of submarine doing anything but suffocating its crew and floundering at sea. He never believed that submarines were possible. Now, the point here is simple. See, what we are calling this slide is breaking the barriers. See, so these examples essentially testify to the fact that the only limitations we have are the ones we place on ourselves. Look at all these things are said by very eminent people. It was not that some man on the street suddenly came and voiced something and walked away. These were said by people who were the undisputed leaders in their respective fields. The good thing was that the human mind did not accept a barrier or did not lose the ability to question things, which is why they were able to break these barriers. Imagine if these barriers were not broken, where would we be today as a civilization? Okay, if all the educated prophecies that are sort of mentioned on this slide had remained unchallenged, where would we be? Thankfully, the passion for questioning those limits prevailed, leading to a continuous evolution of the human civilization over the years. So the point is, never accept anything. If you have an innovative mind, please question things. Don't take anything at face value just because some great person is saying it. It can be challenged. I strongly believe, for example, and I know I'll be wrong, that maybe the day will come when we can even break the light speed barrier. Okay, or we meaning some at some level in which is today considered a total impossibility. Okay, anyhow, so the point is the clear that the questioning of set limits or demolishing all the barriers and boundaries, that means questioning the status quo, is a defining characteristic of what is known as innovation. Okay, and it is this that has led, among many other developments, to digital transformation. If people had not questioned, if people had accepted, suppose somebody had accepted that, okay, Mr. Where is that one gone? Okay, the Boeing chief engineer has said that no plane bigger than Boeing 247 can be built. So let's stop all work on it, not do it. No, they did not accept it. They continued. The human spirit prevailed. The human spirit to do better and cross higher and higher and higher barriers, raising the bar every time. And today also, it is not that because we are so technology advanced, so people are saying that, okay, now everything is done, we can't do anything further. People are still questioning the barriers. Every time a new Apple phone comes, for example, it has something which the previous one did not have, more innovation. Okay, so that is why I wanted to talk about this and give so many examples, that please do not be, if you are cowed down, or if you blindly with eyes closed accept that somebody and so has said this, so it cannot be done, then you cannot innovate. First thing is to be able to question. All right. So the question is now, what next? Okay. Now, okay, I've taken an example here. What next? What is next? So much has already happened. Light speed travel, can that happen? Or brain-computer interface, or teleportation, immortality, interstellar travel, or colonization of exoplanets or planets which are outside our solar system. Those, I mean, there are many possibilities. Those things today we cannot believe that they can ever happen, but they will probably. Okay, for example, take this brain-computer interface example. I mean, look at the mind-boggling thing. Let me explain this. Okay, so what does this imply? Brain-computer interface. It potentially implies that a pair of high-resolution digital cameras. A digital camera is nothing but a sort of a computer. That a pair of high-resolution digital cameras can be interfaced with the optic nerves in the brain, because it's a brain-computer interface. Okay, and to function as your eyes. Now imagine you are here, your eyes are somewhere else, because your eyes are now that high resolution digital cameras which are somewhere else. Now, since a computer interface is not limited by distance, this means that while you, defined by your body, are in, say, New Delhi, your eyes can be in London. Okay, communicating with your brain via satellite signals across continents. So you are able to see across continents even though you are sitting in Delhi, because your eyes are not fixed into your head now, they are somewhere else. Okay, the same may extend to your arms and limbs using computerized electromechanical power devices, as I've shown here, instead of digital cameras. So in short, the brain-computer interface implies that a single human being can be all over the globe at any one instant. A part of me is here, a part of me is in London, part of me is in Singapore, part of me is in New York, part of me is in Timbuktu. Okay, so, and I can control it all with my brain, because my brain is interfaced with a computer interface which is able to communicate over long distances. So imagine the possibility of that. So it is actually, for me, it is very hard to imagine the potential ramifications of this on the human beings. It could be also bad. It could be good as well as bad, because it could give rise to many new forms of crime also. I'm sure people will be innovative in thinking up new crimes also. Okay, anyhow, but the message is that there is no limit to the potential for innovation. You can achieve anything with innovation. That's a message I wanted to give. But however, this was sort of a little bit outside the concept of business. So let us return to the world of business, innovation in the context of business. Uh, okay, where shall I start? Okay, so the term, there are two terms which we commonly come across. One is innovation and one is creativity. Okay, let us talk about this for a second. Now, the terms innovation and creativity are often used interchangeably. We often sometimes call it, oh, this is very creative. Sometimes you say, oh, wow, this is very innovative. But there's a big difference. Okay, they both pertain to ingenuity, and both are functions of the intellect, no doubt about it. But however, there are differences. For example, it is common to refer to originality in the artistic pursuits as creative. For example, when we talk about Michelangelo or Rembrandt, we don't call them innovative, we call them creative because of artistic pursuits. Okay. And when it is in scientific and technological matters, we call it innovation or innovative. So in the context of a business enterprise, both creativity and innovation are relevant, but there are some differences. What are the differences? First is creativity is about thinking new things. When it comes to business, creativity is about thinking new things. Innovation is about doing new things. There's a big difference. Okay, when you can do something, it becomes an innovation. When you can only think of it, okay, it is the creativity. Now, arising from that, what we are saying is that creativity refers to ideas, whereas innovation refers to making ideas happen. A creative idea, now, so again, so let us understand it in the context of business. A creative idea becomes an innovation when it leads to something like a product or a process or a practice that is first desirable to its users. Okay, we'll come to this. Okay, second, it should be doable from a technological perspective. Like we talked about, for example, light speed travel. Okay, it is not doable, right? It may be a great creative idea, but it is not doable as of date at least. So, but an innovation has to be doable also. Third thing is it should be also viable. What does viable mean? Viable means that it should be, from a workability perspective, it should be capable of working successfully. I don't know how many of you remember, this is just a thought that I had. Somebody, I'm sure Ravi remembers that, somebody came up a few years ago with an idea of a rupees 200 smartphone. Okay, now that was not a viable concept at all. So therefore it was, to me, it was not an innovation because it did not have from a workability perspective, it was not capable of working successfully, that idea. Okay, so it was not viable. And finally, it should be feasible from a cost and resource perspective. I mean, it should be affordable. One should be able to invest finite resources. It should not be infinite. So it should be feasible from a point of view of cost and resource deployment. So at the intersection of all of this, when all of these intersect, that little intersection that you see between desirability, doability, viability, and feasibility, that is where you get business innovation. If an idea does not meet all these criteria, it may still be a creative one, okay, but it will not be necessarily innovative. I hope it is clear what we mean by innovation versus creativity. A small example that I can right now think of, a self-driven car, for example. Till recently, it was a creative idea, but it did not fulfill all these four criteria. Now it does. So therefore, a self-driven car was a creative idea till a few years ago, but now today it is an innovation. Okay, so that is sort of one example. In the context of business, including digital business, the focus, as I said, is on creative thinking, sure, but it is creative thinking that leads to innovation. So, but the final outcome and the final demonstration is innovation, not creativity. Creativity is, as I said, refers to ideas. Okay, but at the same time, it is creativity that forms the seed of innovation. Look at this diagram. Okay, now the creative, it was very creative on the part of R.L. Stevenson to do an invention. Creativity leads to inventions. Like he invented the steam engine, which then led to railways. But what did innovation do? It created a train like a maglev or the bullet train or whatever you call it. So this innovation, this bullet train is not a result of, is not an invention. It is an innovation. Okay, so but the seed of that innovation was a creative idea, which resulted in an invention. So that is what it is important to show so creative thinking cannot be overlooked or emphasized because it is what eventually leads to an innovation. Because as I said, creativity is the seed of innovation. I hope it is all clear. If you have any questions on this, ask me, because these concepts are good, but they are simple to understand and relate to. I'm sure this is Now let's talk about something very important relating to innovation with respect to our current world today, and especially the digital world. Okay. Now, don't get confused by these slides. These are very, very simple things. I'll just walk you through this. See, so first, to keep our discussions on innovation simple and focused, let us tag innovation into two buckets. Okay, we'll use the term innovation. See, as I said, let us talk about. Okay, let me not look at the slide. Let me just. The innovation in the first bucket is disruptive, the disruptive innovation. Let's first talk about the disruptive. There are two types of innovation. When I said then let's tag innovation into two buckets, I mean that innovation can be of two types. First is the disruptive innovation. Okay, and that innovation in the second bucket is what we call garden variety innovation. Let's talk about these two. These, by the way, this garden variety innovation is a completely arbitrary label. Don't Google it. It is my own term that I use in my book. Okay, all breakthrough innovation. Breakthrough, the key word is breakthrough. Like, for example, what is a breakthrough innovation? Something like the internet or the maglev, which is the magnetic train which runs in Shanghai, I think. Cloud technology, jet propulsion, 3D printing, driverless cars. Now, these are all breakthrough innovation. They don't happen every day. And I don't think you and I are expected to come up with a breakthrough innovation tomorrow. Nobody expects us that we will be responsible for a breakthrough. These happen rarely, relatively rarely, I would say. Okay, these are of disruptive type because they suddenly emerge like a sort of a towering tower or a towering edifice on a vacant expanse of green turf. Suppose you are going and there is all green turf and everything is plain. Suddenly you see a tower there. Okay, but so that is different from the green turf. That is at one level, this tower is at another level. So that is why such disruptive innovations are also called greenfield innovations, because they appear as a sort of a towering edifice on a expanse of green land. So anything new and disruptive is called greenfield. So that is what is the definition of greenfield innovation. Now, a word or two more on this that I want to talk about. I hope I am making sense. Disruptive innovation happens when the pace of technology. Now let's look at the diagram on the left. When the pace of technology, we are talking about technological innovation here, when the pace of technologically dramatically overtakes the pace of, you see the little arrows or little line graphs at the bottom. So when the pace of technology dramatically, that means by a huge margin, overtakes the pace of social, political, and business change, okay, then the disruption is then the innovation is disruptive. The thing about disruptive innovation is that you never know when the next one is going to happen. For all we know, there may be a disruptive innovation today evening. Somebody may announce a sure shot cure for corona virus or COVID-19. That would be in current context a disruptive innovation. Okay, disruptive innovations don't happen every day, but when they do, they shake things up a bit. Okay, they create a big impact, huge impact. Okay, but it is not for people like us to be, okay, if we can achieve a disruptive innovation in our lifetime, great, we'll become famous. But it is not something that everybody expects to be able to achieve. Now, there are many examples, of course, of disruptive innovation, which you can both big and small, which pertain to different industry, not depending on the discipline or the industry that you chose to go to. I'm sure you can find many examples of disruptive innovations that pertain to your industry. Now, the other type of innovation, which is pertinent to us here, the other type of innovation that impacts business just as much as the disruptive innovation, not because it is disruptive in nature, but because of its ability to make you different from other people, or because it questions old ways of doing things. That is known as the garden variety or the usual everyday innovation. This is smaller innovation, but it happens more regularly. Disruptive innovation is huge impact innovation, but it happens rarely. The garden variety innovation is nothing but usual common innovation that can be applied to everyday matters. For example, by the way, and this garden variety innovation is not dependent on the next big thing in science or technology or economics, but to the application of thought to everyday matters. Okay. Let me think of some examples of garden variety innovation. Okay, I'll come to that. So the essence of garden variety innovation is the questioning spirit. Basically, as I said, the garden variety innovation happens to make you somewhat different from your competition or your peer or somebody else. Okay, And secondly, to be the questioning ability that somebody is doing it this way, let me do it this way. Now, it is not disruptive. It is not going to change the world, but it is going to change a lot of things around you, make you different. Okay, so this innovation applied to the essence of garden variety innovation is the questioning spirit, as I said, and simple out of the box or lateral thinking applied to familiar subjects. Okay, for achieving small but significant improvements. Okay, that is what is garden variety innovation. And it's very important for all of you to understand what is disruptive innovation and what is garden variety innovation. Most of us, when we go for innovation, we think of disruptive innovation. As I said, disruptive innovation cannot be relied upon to be done by everybody. It can happen by chance, like blockchain is a disruptive innovation, but I don't think today I can think of inventing a blockchain like technology on my own, but I can do some incremental changes on blockchain, how it can be used innovatively for within my enterprise or my environment or my home. Okay, that is what is garden variety innovation. So much of the garden variety innovation comes, as I said, not from scientists and experts, but from students, from employees, from business folks, or from consumers or customers, people like you and me. Okay, a great example now. One example that I can think of garden variety innovation is sliced bread. Earlier, bread used to be available only as a loaf. Okay, somebody thought of one day that, okay, ultimately people break the bread and eat it. Nobody puts the whole loaf in their mouth. So they started selling it as sliced bread and it became instantly a success. It was a very minor thing, no technology, nothing major required. It was just an idea. Or, uh, like for example, I go to the store to buy groceries from my home. Now, the tomato ketchup bottle, now they have started the upside down bottle, because earlier it was very difficult. You had to press the bottle from its back in order for the ketchup to drop. So if you sell an upside down bottle, it makes it so easy to let the ketchup out. So that's also a small example, but an example of a garden variety innovation. In the office environment, for example, when many of us who have worked in office environment, I think this whole concept of hot desk or dynamic seating is an example of a garden variety innovation. Okay, that means that earlier every person used to be given his or her own desk or cubicle to sit in. Now that was a waste, because a lot of people keep traveling. Most of the time they are not on their seats. They may be on an on-site assignment or somewhere. So they started the concept of hot desking, that at any time only 60% of the people are in office. So why have 100% seats? Let's have 60% seats and people can reserve their seats in advance. That was a great idea. I think it resulted in so much savings in rental costs and other such things. Many business applications that we see, they are not examples of disruptive innovation. They are examples of garden variety innovations. Okay, so I hope it is clear what we mean by disruptive innovation and by garden variety innovation. So commonly the term innovation, this is important, as applied in the context of digital enterprises or digital transformation, refers to garden variety innovation. It doesn't refer to disruptive innovation, because people know that disruptive innovation is not something that you can rely upon somebody to achieve. But garden variety innovation, all of us are expected to do. All of us are expected to do things differently, do things better, apply the creative ideas in order to achieve something differently. Okay, so basically, in the context of digital enterprises, as I said, we mostly refer to innovation. When we say innovation, we mean garden variety innovation, which is basically, again, to repeat, I think innovation that is applied to everyday matters. Innovation that is applied to everyday matters in doing things better, faster, or cheaper. Okay, that is what is garden variety innovation. How can you do something to achieve a better result? That means good, fast, and cheap, all the three. That is when you apply it to smaller aspects of your enterprise or whatever project or whatever activity you are doing, that becomes garden variety innovation. Okay, now digital companies use innovation to find ways around complex business problems, as we have been discussing, and the key to finding those solutions is innovation. So they apply certain techniques to achieve that innovation. Now, as I said in the beginning, it is, if you go into that technique, it would be an excellent discussion. We would love to do it if we could, but unfortunately, you cannot do it in a 50 or 60-minute class. Okay, so I cannot talk about all the technique, but let me give you an introduction, very high level introduction to one or two. But essentially, it's a matter of practice. So let's look at a couple of ways of achieving this garden variety innovation. How is it achieved? Okay, let's look at one of the techniques, which is bucketization. It's a very simple, simplest of all. This is a technique for organizing the thinking process. Okay, it entails breaking down the assignment into smaller and smaller units. I mean, if you have to do something very, very big, okay, for example, like something like digital transformation, you cannot just say that, okay, my goal is to do, no, you break down digital transformation into smaller and smaller activities and focus on each activity at a time without going from one activity, which is called a bucket, to another. I'll give you a very good example which will make you understand it very well. Okay, so okay, so there's a big business problem. You break up the business problem into its component parts or sub themes, as it called, sub problems or smaller problems. Then you can break up each problem into even smaller problems, and even smaller. You can add infinitum. You can go on doing it, because the smaller you break down a problem into, the smaller segment you break it down into, the easier it is to solve and think about. Okay, if you talk about digital transformation, suppose somebody asks you the question, what are you going to do to achieve digital transformation? You cannot answer that question. But if you break it down into first four large activities, that I will transform my customer experience, I will transform my business model, I will transform my technology, and I will transform my processes, then it becomes easy. Then you think within processes, okay, what processes shall I transform? You think of technology, what technology should I transform? It becomes easier. So basically you are structuring your thinking process. Okay, it allows us to create broad themes in which to structure your thinking and response, and subsequently breaking up these themes into smaller and smaller sub-themes. I hope this idea is clear, because trust me, you'll be using this a lot in your work, in your life, and the more you use it in any sphere of your life, need not be your job, even in your social life or home life or other aspect business, it will be useful. The best way to understand it is structuring how you answer the most common interview question of all. I think that is why I brought up this question. Okay, I am 100% sure whichever company now or even later in life, when you go for an interview, you will be asked one question for sure. Tell us about yourself. Okay, the interviewer, when you are sitting for the interview, he will say, okay, please tell us about yourself. This is a standard question everybody asks. Okay, it is not that they don't know about you. They have called you for the interview, so they know enough about you. Plus, they have their CV, your CV in front of them, so they can read it. But this question is basically to understand how your thinking process is. Okay, so when you answer this question, think only of the bucket or sub bucket that you have chosen. Do not jump between buckets. Now, so for example, in this here we have divided me, as in any of us here, into, let us say, four buckets. When the interviewer tells me, tell us about yourself, this is just an example to give bucketization, to introduce bucketization. So education, experience, my personal life, and my future plans. Let us say I break up my life into these four things. Okay, now within my education, I start talking about my school. When I'm talking about my school, I only talk about my school. I don't jump from talking about my school to going to my long-term vision, which is the last. I only talk about my school. When I finish talking about school, then I talk about my college, university. Then I talk about what extracurricular activities I participated in. So I complete this education bucket, and within education bucket, the sub-buckets that I've created within education. Suppose you have studied in 3 different schools in your lifetime. You can create 3 other buckets under school: school A, school B, school C. Okay, and then talk about that. Will structure your thinking process, because then you are only thinking of school at that time. Okay, so if you, for example, now let's say you are sitting in front of the interviewer and you talk about your personal life, and then you jump to your future plans, let's say, which is the last one year, and then to education, and then back to personal life, you will be giving evidence to the interviewer of a very cluttered mind, and that will reduce your selection chances. Even though you will feel, yeah, have I not been selected? I answered everything correctly, because the way you answered gave a sort of a view or a demonstration of a very cluttered mind, which cannot think in a structured way. Okay, so that is why bucketization is important. Now, this was an example I'm sure all of you can relate to, because when you talk about yourself, don't talk about yourself in general. That, okay, I talk about one aspect of my life and jump to some unconnected aspect of my life and come back to the first aspect, because that confuses people. When you talk in a structured way, people can relate to what you are saying much better. They will show interest in what you are saying. Okay, and the same principle applies when we are solving business problems. Like on the left, bucketization helps to declutter the thinking. For example, it can be used very effectively to solve some common and though very critical business problems, like, for example, how to improve my customers experience. You form four large buckets. Okay, like I will improve my sales to order process, I will improve my dealership channels and make them more courteous, I will improve my customer service, or whatever. Okay, they break it into buckets, and then sub buckets, and then sub buckets, and so on. So how to improve my customer experience, or how to run the project on cost and schedule. Okay, you can use the bucketization technique to solve that also. Or what should be the specifications of a new product that you are planning to launch in the market? What should be its features and specifications? So all that can be done very simply and easily using the bucketization process as opposed to a list process. List process means, okay, what should be the features and the specifications of your new product? You start thinking randomly. You will never arrive at a big list. I can give you a simple example. If I tell me 12 different uses of a piece of string or a rope, you will not be able to. I can guarantee it. Nobody can randomly write in 5 minutes 12 different uses of a string. But if you think in a structured way that, okay, where is a string used in a kitchen? Where is a string used in a factory? Where is a string used in a hotel? Where is a string used in the sports, in the field of sports? And so on, in so many areas. Then you can relate the string to different things and you can list down 12 uses of a string or perhaps more uses of the string very easily. So bucketization is the way to structure your thinking. Let's look at another technique, fusion. Now this is simpler or as simple. Actually, none of the techniques are difficult. They're just ways to think. Now, we have spoken in earlier classes about, I hope you all remember that we spoke about the magic of intersection in creating innovative ideas. That two good ideas, when they intersect, they create a third good idea. That is the theme that we have been talking about. Our digital transformation relies, as we shall see here, a lot on intersection, which is also called fusion, by the way, of ideas and concepts from different fields. Okay, merging together to create a new solution. Let's look at this table. Now, on the x-axis on top, I have healthcare, entertainment, and sports. Three random fields. Random fields I picked. And on the y-axis on the left column, I have picked up two other random fields like electronics and automobiles. When you intersect these together, for example, when electronics intersects with healthcare, a blood pressure monitor machine, you must have seen it in your homes. Okay, earlier there used to be that mercury-based U-shaped thing which you might have seen at some doctor's places. Nobody knew how to use it. Today, somebody who was a wizard in electronics and somebody who understood the medicine or the health care system very well, they would have come together and thought, hey, yeah, we can combine the feats in electronics with the feats in healthcare to create a digital blood pressure machine or a digital thermometer or a ultrasound scanner. That's also a combination of medical science and electronics, right? Similarly, if you, for example, intersect sports with automobiles, you get something like a Formula Racing or monster trucks and anything. Entertainment with, for example, electronics, you get PlayStation. Okay, earlier entertainment used to be a totally different field, electronics was a different field. But when these diverse fields intersect with each other, okay, you can do this in your mind. You can pick up any two things in the world and try to intersect and see what are the possibilities, what can you do at that intersection, what new ideas or innovations are possible at the intersection. So therefore, this is a very important technique that many companies use, that you have one good idea. Now let's look at digital technology. In digital technology, we have talked about many technological breakthroughs like cloud and big data analytics and social media and mobility and IoT and so many other things. What happens when they intersect with each other? Okay, innovations which are, now look at this. Okay, except for the ones which are in dark blue, because there is no intersection. So example, when you intersect, for example, big data with cloud, what do you get? Facial recognition. And there is a crowd of, let's say, 10,000 people somewhere, and you have a facial recognition camera somewhere. It can focus on all those because it can process big data, and it has data. There's data on the cloud, and it can be processed to create facial recognition. It's an intersection of cloud and big data. One of the applications. When mobility intersects with cloud, you get e-commerce. Okay, so there are various new innovations and new technologies which have been created by, for example, when IoT intersects with mobility, you get connected cars. Okay, cars that can communicate with each other and with other sort of appliances. When big data intersects with IoT, what do you get? Machine learning. Okay, so all these things that we talk about and listen about or read about, essentially they are intersection of some existing technologies which are being used very innovatively. So at the heart is, of course, innovation. And within innovation, the type of innovation that is used is intersection, or which is also called fusion. I hope that is making sense, because I don't have time to go through all of these. I spent a lot of time, by the way, in creating these tables, because it's not always easy to come up with the best examples. So when you get some time, go through this. Maybe you will get more ideas. I'm not saying these are the best possible ideas. When you think about it, you can get probably better and more ideas than what I have presented here. But essentially, the idea is that a cloud in itself, or big data in itself, or mobility in itself is nothing. Only when it intersects with other technology, you create differentiation and create value for your business and your customers. Otherwise, all businesses would be the same. If they were all using the cloud in the same way, there was no intersection, no fusion with other technology. How would you differentiate? So this is another way to create innovative new products and ideas or processes or methods or whatever, which is deployed in digital transformation. So we looked at two methods briefly. One was bucketization, one was fusion or intersection. Now, these are only two of the methods. There are many such other methods which we cannot go into. I'm just presenting here some other methods which I'm not going to, brainstorming, which you all know about. But by the way, that's also done in a very structured way, and it's more than what it appears. When it is done brainstorming properly, basically it means many minds coming together to work on a single problem at the same time, and that sort of multiplies your power of innovation by the number of people that are there in the room. So brainstorming is a great thing. We cannot talk much about it. Similarly, association. Our association means that when we have one idea, how does it associate with other things to create more ideas? It is very similar to this cross-pollination. There are differences. I'm unable to go into it. I'm sorry for that because of lack of time. For example, you think of common things like sports. Suppose somebody gives you a problem. What are the drivers of market growth for your company? Now you start thinking of sports. What are the things that sports reminds you of? Competitiveness, teamwork, anticipation, foresight, right? This is what is required in sports. Similarly, if you think of music, what does music tell you? Timing, rhythm, and orchestration. Now, these are things which you can really, okay, so when I think of music, it's like a cross-pollination. A bee goes to cross-pollinate different themes, which are flowers, to create the nectar, which is ideas. Okay, so when you do this, you can get a lot of ideas which are related to different fields, but can be applied to solve the current problem. The fishbone is another technique to achieve the root cause analysis, where you break up a problem into its sub-problems and then sub-problems. For example, in this, we have said, suppose there's a problem of wrong or delayed or damaged delivery. Now, what could be responsible for it? First you identify the big rocks like material, methods, machines, environment, measurement, personnel. Now, within each, you define smaller areas, and then you study it, and you will arrive at the exact root cause as to what is called the wrong, delayed, or damaged delivery. Now, these are all techniques which are mastered or perfected through practice. Okay, I am only introducing it here. I'm not talking about it here. Okay, you could buy my book, by the way. I'm not asking you to buy it, but because there I've talked about many other techniques, not only these, in a lot of detail and with a lot of examples, but there are a lot of information available on the internet also. You can just type any of these. These are common words. These are not my introductions. These are very common terms. If you talk about cross-pollination, you will find on the internet how cross-pollination works, and similarly association. Okay, so this is, in fact, these are some of the more powerful techniques, but there are quite a lot. Try to read some books, try to do some reading and practice whenever you have time. Do it as a hobby. In fact, I would urge you, not as some compulsion, but as a hobby. For example, try to read this book by De Bono. I have it at me somewhere. De Bono, it's called Six Thinking Hats. Or there's another book by De Bono called Lateral Thinking. Okay, so lateral thinking is, of course, you have all heard of lateral thinking. Lateral thinking means trying to solve a problem by looking at it and thinking sort of outside the box. Okay, so it does not always mean that you need to possess some special kind of knowledge or tools or wisdom to solve it. Let's take an example. I've taken a very good example, and feel free to unmute your laptops and give the answer if you can get the answer. I will give you 60 seconds to solve this question. I mean, very simple question. Okay, let us take a very simple geometry problem. Okay, a simple geometry problem. It was asked to me in my first interview, by the way, probably 35 years ago or more. Okay, and I still remembered it. And when I was making these slides yesterday, I included it. I'm sure all of you, if not most of you, if not all of you, will be able to easily get it. You have 60 seconds to do it. Simple problem. Okay, now we have, let us draw a circle. Okay, this is a circle, perfect circle. We have a circle. It has two perpendicular diameters. Okay, this is one, this is another, right? And O is the center of the circle. And then we have point A on one of the diameters, and we draw a line segment OA. Clear so far? Okay, then the length of OA is 3. The D is the point where the diameter meets the circle. This AD is 1. I hope that there is nothing unclear so far. Some of you may have seen this before also. We have all done differential calculus and differential equations and integral calculus and all those things, so this should probably be a cakewalk. But now from A, we draw perpendicular to the circumference of the circle. meeting it at point B, and from B we drop another perpendicular, meeting it at point C. Okay, we join OC by another line segment. Okay, now the question. Is there any question on this diagram so far? It's a simple diagram. Okay, now you have 30 seconds to think of the answer. Okay, what you have to do is tell me the length of AC. What is the length of AC? We have 1 minute. Anybody who gets the answer, unmute and tell me. If there is any question about the problem, you can also ask me if you have not understood the question. But it's a simple question. It's a right angle triangle, and you have to tell me the length of AC.
4.
Okay. Any other answers? I am surprised if only one of you can even say an answer. I will tell you whether it is right or wrong, but at least venture some answers. As I said in the beginning.
3 root 2.
Sorry, 3 root 2. Okay. What else? Anybody else?
Root 14.
Root 14. Okay. Anybody else?
4 is the answer.
Say again. Okay. Okay. I think we have closed 1 minute. Good. Thank you for all of you who attempted. Doesn't matter whether you were right or wrong. Answer yes. The first gentleman who said the answer, he is right. It is 4. Why is it 4? Because see, I'll tell you something. Why is this an example of lateral thinking? It's a very easy problem especially for people like you who are studying in IIT. This should be absolutely no problem. The problem is it requires lateral. Most of us, when we see a right angle triangle, only think in one direction, which is Pythagoras. Okay, but every right, and now the clear answer here, if what is the length of AC? Now the answer is, see, if you draw mentally a perpendicular, a diagonal like this, OB. Now OB of course is 4, 3 and 1, 4. So if OB is 4, AC is also 4. Okay, so but if you apply Pythagoras or something, most people apply Pythagoras and get to answers like 3 root 2 and all. That's a good way of thinking. It's not a wrong way. Pythagoras is a useful thing. So it's not that anybody who thinks of Pythagoras, but there is nothing given in the problem that says that OC is also 3. Where did I say when we were describing the problem that OC is 3? If OC was 3, then yes, the answer would be 3 root 2. But no, we didn't say that OC is 3. We only said OA is 3 and OA is 3 and AD is 1. So this is an example of lateral thinking where you don't think in the usual way that we are used to thinking. We are used to thinking in terms of Pythagoras theorem. Now, this doesn't require any knowledge that we don't already have. Okay. Sometimes MSc in mathematics may not be able to solve this problem. And sometimes the class 6 standard student may be able to solve this problem because it doesn't require some special the formula or knowledge or something. All it needs you to know is that the diagonals of a rectangle are equal. Okay, and what I have done is I have not constructed the second diagonal. So that you have to construct it in your mind. So this is lateral thinking. This is just a very small example. I thought that if you do it as an exercise, you will appreciate it. Requiring, and congratulations to those of you who got the answer 4. Very good. I was asked this question, and by the way, not to brag, but I was able to answer it in about very quickly. That's why probably I got my job, my first job, okay, many years ago. So it was a simple problem. It did not require knowledge of more tools than you already have, just innovative thinking. Okay, which is different from our structured thinking. Structured thinking is apply Pythagoras. It is called out-of-the-box thinking or lateral thinking. This is the core essence of lateral thinking, to use unconventional ways to solve a problem. Okay, or it means thinking differently by viewing the problem in new and unusual light. The same applies to our course theme of digital transformation. Today, organizations rely on individuals who can think laterally as their biggest asset. Okay, and as I said, all of us can think laterally. Lateral thinking is not an inborn trait or a genetic something. Okay, all of us can do it. All it needs is some practice. Okay, so that's why I've been emphasizing in this class that try to achieve some way of getting some practice of doing and thinking innovatively. It can be perfected through practice. Now I come to, okay, we have 10 minutes. So we come to a very important slide. Now don't get confused about this because this is to do not with so much to the lecture, but it has to do with the exercise that we will be doing. Now, this is a slide that is commonly used for planning and executing digital transformation projects. We will apply innovation here. I'll tell you in a minute how. Now, I have simplified it to a large extent so that it is compatible with the topics that we have covered so far in our lectures and is also not too complex for you to understand. I mean, right now it may be appearing complex because suddenly it has appeared in front of you. But when you look at it carefully, it is not at all complex. Now, the process, look at the left, legacy or analog enterprise, which means how was the enterprise, if it existed at all, before the digital transformation. That's what we mean by a legacy enterprise. So it includes writing down a few points from the as is state or the legacy state of the enterprise before you transform it digitally. What was the, what, for example, what is the state of the key parameters, like for example technology or process or culture in the company before the digital transformation. Now the digital transformation starts with defining a vision, as we said in the earlier class. Okay, so you can define a vision. Okay, in this case, or if you cannot define a vision, no problem, you may just do the mission. What is the mission? Mission is the purpose of the transformation. Mission means purpose. Okay, so why are you doing this transformation? That I'm sure you can define. Whatever theme you take, we'll talk about some themes. I just this morning before the class, I wrote down some 10 or 12 themes, which I will show you on the next slide. You can pick any of them or anything outside of that also, that's okay. Okay, so it starts with defining the mission, or if you want, you can even define the mission or the purpose of the transformation if vision is proving very difficult. Now, once an idea of the current state, which you have recorded already, as I said, is, and you have also created a mission. Okay, it is time to identify the key transformation objectives. Now, if you remember when we were talking about bucketization, see, you cannot solve a problem if you think of it too holistically or as one large. You cannot just go and boil the whole ocean at one time. So you have to break it down into what specifically are, when you say digital transformation of the enterprise, what parts of the enterprise, or what is it that you are targeting to transform? You cannot, I mean, an enterprise transformation is a very vague term. There are enterprise consists of many things: processes, people, culture, technology, hundreds of things. Okay, so what is it that you're going to transform? Not just the what, not how. What is it that you're going to transform is called a transformation objective or a key transformation objective. We will call it a KSO as it is written here. Actually, it should be KTO, but because I talked in my book, I called it key strategic objective. So I called it KSO, but KSO, KTO, whatever you call it, I here call it KSO because that's what I have written here. So once an idea of the current state is recorded and a vision is created, it is you identify the key transformation objectives or the KSOs. Now, as we discussed, there can be many possible KSOs. I will talk about the KSOs on the next slide. Okay, that the company may need to work on in its digital transformation journey. Like we were talking about bucketization, when we said that, okay, tell me about yourself. You broke your life into, let us say, we talked about breaking it into 4 things: your education, extracurricular experience, etc., etc. Similarly, your digital vision or mission also, you break it into KSOs. Then it becomes easy to solve. If you look at it whole as a vision, you cannot achieve the vision just directly. So you have to break it up into specific KSOs. Now, typically, now there are many KSOs that if you break it up, you'll probably come across with 15 or 20 things that you need to look at in order to do the digital transformation. However, typically companies prioritize the top 5 or 6. You cannot do so many at a time. You may gradually do it in different phases, but typically companies prioritize the top 5 or 6 KSOs and apply various techniques of innovation to transform these to align or to achieve their mission. Okay. For example, here I have taken some KSOs: technology, market strategy, processes, customer experience, business models, products and services. Now it helps me when I say digital vision or digital transformation. Okay, I'm transforming my technology, or I'm transforming my market strategy, or I'm transforming my processes. The problem becomes much easier to solve when I boil it down into subcomponents, right? So that is what this is. This is similar to what we spoke about in bucketization. Now, once these KSOs are identified, this is important. The most difficult and the most important exercise that a company does during digital transformation, trust me, is to identify the right set of KSOs. People start targeting the wrong things. Okay, most of them do technology transformation first. It may not be required to do technology transformation. You may have to do people transformation first. So you have not looked at the people KSO, but rather looked at the technology KSO, which was not as important as the people. So therefore, your transformation fails. So the point here is that you have to spend a lot of time and effort and thinking into deciding on the right set of the top 5 or top 6 KSOs that you are going to work on. So the next major action is to identify, as you see on the right side of the slide. Okay, the next major action is to identify as I have said here, the key opportunities for innovation for that case. Like for example, when you say ICT, okay, adoption of cloud computing may be an opportunity against the technology KSO. Okay, when you say that, okay, I will transform my technology. Now, what is an opportunity for innovation in technology? Okay, cloud computing is an example before me. How you use cloud computing is a sub-level of that. Okay, but adoption of cloud computing may be an opportunity against the technology KSOs. Similarly, market strategy, or there are different opportunities. You have to identify those opportunities for innovation. those opportunities for innovation in turn depend on what case you have prioritized. Okay, I hope it is clear. It is not difficult. So basically, you have a as state, you have a mission, you have the KSOs, and for each KSOs, you have a opportunity for innovation. Once you have delivered on that opportunity for innovation, then you achieve the targeted state. The exercise is so okay. So to repeat, the exercise is to pick a problem. Now, what problem to pick? We can discuss. Pick a problem, define an existing state, identify the key transformation objectives or key strategic objectives. I would say typically don't choose more than 5. So if you want, you can. Okay, and then select the right opportunities that are available for every KSO for using innovation. And how do you use it innovatively? Because you have to use some innovation somewhere. Okay, to attain success as a digital enterprise. How do you become a digital enterprise from an analog enterprise using innovation or the opportunities for innovation against each KSO? Broadly, that is the problem. And by the way, I would also like you to include reasons for selecting a specific KSO. Why have you chosen, for example, if you choose market strategy, or if you have chosen products and services, why have you chosen that? Just maybe a line or two of that would be useful. But that would depend on what is the current state you define. Okay, so depending on the current state, you choose the KSOs. Why you have chosen the KSOs, you give in reasons. And how do you improve? By using one of the opportunities for innovation that exists for each KSO, one or more rather. Okay, so now with that, we come to the, now this, I just made this slide a little while ago. I just randomly wrote down some ideas for some scenarios for digital transformation that you can use in your case study, like retail marketplace. How do you move from an online store, from a brick and mortar store to an online store? Just a very high level. Don't have to go into the intricacies. Or from an over the counter to a mobile app based travel ticketing method. Or if you can do a startup food delivery chain, or you can do a startup for online training classes. Okay, the basic model can fit into anything. Okay, or a hotel front office digital transformation. Instead of writing down in a register, if the person wants to use it, you do it through an app. Even before you reach the hotel, you can check in. Okay, that kind of digital transformation for the hotel front office, or demand supply harmonization in a manufacturing unit. How do you do just-in-time manufacturing that so that your raw material is just in sync with your demand? Okay, parcel delivery service, cloud-based content management and delivery, auto parts aggregator, like you are running an auto store which sells parts for all automobiles. So there are various suppliers for auto parts for different type of cars, and you aggregate all of that. Okay, and a customer can walk into your store or through online. You can provide any part for any car. That is known as aggregation. We talked about aggregation also in one of the classes. Okay. Now, healthcare center operation, for example, vaccination. If you were running the vaccination drive through a digital transformation, how would you use these methods that we have discussed to achieve vaccination? Or these are just some random ideas I had. You can use any idea of your own. You can talk to me, you can talk to Dr. Mittal, send us a mail that this is the idea you plan to use. Okay, now I have also now written here that you have to include your vision or mission, as we just discussed. And these are some of the KSOs. Now, as I said in the last slide when we were discussing, that pick 5. Okay, 5, or if worst case you put 4 at least, but in no case more than 6, because that would become very difficult for you to handle. Typically in enterprises, I have seen that for each KSO, there's a different team from a different function, the technology team or supply chain management team or HR team or business and sales team. The different teams work on different KSOs. Okay, but here we don't have that, so we'll all do the same thing. So like technology, market strategy, process, customer experience, culture and mindset, business technology alignment, business model, monetization, products and services, all these could be KSO. That means in your existing state of the enterprise, some of these are not being managed well. So therefore you are adopting digital transformation to improve them. Okay, like monetization, you are losing a lot of money because you did not have right ways to monetize. So how do you use monetization in terms of your digital transformation to improve on that parameter? Or you can have more, but I think these are more than enough. You pick any 5 of these at best. You can also pick 4 if you cannot do not find scope for a 5th one, but not less than 4 in any case. 5 is ideal, 6 is maximum. Okay, so pick that and create 3 slides that we discussed, and we will discuss them over the whenever we date that we pick out for this, right? So that's all that I had to say. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.